Okay, so what if the best way to understand the law isn't to think like a lawyer at all? What if it's to think like someone who, frankly, couldn't care less about it? It sounds pretty out there, I know, but this radical idea comes from one of the greatest legal minds in American history, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. Today, we're going to unpack his game-changing concept, the bad man theory.
All right, to really wrap our heads around what Holmes was getting at, we're going to ditch the heavy legal textbooks for a minute. Instead, let's start with a character, a person with a very, very different point of view.
So, just for a second, I want you to try something. Forget everything you think you know about morality, about right and wrong, good and bad. Now, imagine the only thing you cared about when you looked at a rule was, okay, what's actually going to happen to me if I break this? And that question, that's the mindset of our main character, the bad man. Now, don't get hung up on the name. He's not necessarily some mustache-twirling villain. Think of him as radically pragmatic. He couldn't care less about ethics or what the law is supposed to mean. All he wants to know is the bottom line. What's gonna happen? Now, you'd think this kind of cynical, what's in it for me attitude is the last thing a top legal mind would care about, right? Well, that's what makes this whole thing so wild. So let's meet the guy who came up with it. And here is the big reveal. The person who thought this was a great idea wasn't some random critic. It was Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. Yeah, that Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., one of the most celebrated justices ever to sit on the Supreme Court. And he didn't just find it interesting, he thought it was the most useful way to get what the law is all about. And get this quote. It's so short, but it says everything. When Holmes considered the bad man, he didn't judge him or dismiss him. He looked at that perspective and said, I am much of his mind. Wow. He's basically saying, yep, that guy's onto something. That's where we need to start if we're going to be honest about how the law actually works. So, let's put a pin in it. What is the bad man theory? At its core, it's a thought experiment, a tool. It's about stripping away all the flowery language about justice and morality and seeing the law for what it is in the real world, a system that creates very real, very tangible consequences. It's less about philosophy and more about prediction. Okay, so if the law isn't really about right and wrong, then what is it? Well, Holmes had this incredible way of thinking about it. He saw the law as a kind of prophecy. And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. You've got the traditional moral view on one side, right? All about duty, ethics, doing what's right. But then you have Holmes's bad man view on the other side. And for him, it's all about prediction and consequences. The question is never, is this the right thing to do? It's, what will a court actually do if I do this? It's a huge difference. And this quote, man, this one really gets to the core of his whole worldview. The life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience. What he's saying is, you can't figure out the law by just thinking about it in some abstract logical way. You have to look at what's actually happening out there in the world, at the real world results in courtrooms. So that's the big metaphor, right? The law is a prophecy. And if you follow that logic, a lawyer's job isn't really to argue about justice. Their job is to be a fortune teller, to predict with as much accuracy as possible what a judge is going to do. For the bad man, that prediction is the law, because it's the only thing that's going to affect his life.
And you know, this wasn't just some clever little idea to debate in the classroom. Oh no. Holmes's theory basically lit a match and threw it into the world of legal thinking. It started a full-blown revolution.
His idea became one of the building blocks for this huge movement called legal realism, and this was a game changer. Suddenly, people were arguing that the law isn't some perfect set of rules that judges just find. Nope. The legal realists said the law is whatever judges say it is, and that's shaped by, their own beliefs, their backgrounds, even what they had for breakfast. It was a massive shift from law in the books to law in action. And this way of thinking completely changes how you define something as basic as a legal duty. For Holmes, it's not some grand moral obligation. It's a simple cause and effect recipe. Step 1, a person does something. Step 2, the courts hit them with a consequence they don't like. That's it. Your legal duty is just a prediction that if you do X, you're going to have to deal with Y. So, okay, this idea is over 100 years old. Why are we still talking about it? Why does it still matter so much? What's the big takeaway here? At the end of the day, the bad man theory is about being brutally honest. It yanks us away from this idea of the law as this grand, perfect system of oughts and forces us to stare at what it is in the real world. And this is still so relevant. You see it everywhere, from a big corporation calculating the risk of a lawsuit to a defendant deciding whether to take a plea deal. It's all about predicting outcomes. It's the ultimate shift from idealism to, well, realism. And that leaves us with one last kind of chilling question, doesn't it? If the law is just a prophecy, if it's all about predicting what a handful of people in robes are going to do, then who really holds the crystal ball? Who has the real power? It's definitely something to think about.